not going to stay on the table while I fix stuff. So in front of you we have a Monarch adding machine, which is actually made by Remington Rand, and they sold basically the same machine under the Remington Rand brand name as well. It's a nice little machine. It's a little bit bigger than the Swift, but it's a nice small size. You can see it has a nice cast aluminum base plate, which I like, and it has one interesting feature. It looks like at some time someone lost the key that was supposed to go here, and so they've replaced it with, I can get in here on this, maybe not, they replaced it with a can of Campbell's tomato soup. It's interesting. This machine has a soup button. Anyway, I had gone, when I first got this machine, I had gone through it a little bit and cleaned and oiled it. And I was going to make a video about that, but I realized that the way the machine is structured, you really can't see much of the inner workings. You know, everything's got kind of like a cover over it, and it's kind of buried, so you can't really see a whole lot. But this machine has a problem, and we're going to see if we can fix it, which will require some effort. Let's get rid of that. So we start doing some regular adding. See, the ribbon is kind of sad. I really can't really see on the ribbon. Just barely make out what is stamping. What I've entered is the regular, 1, 2, 3, etc., and then backwards again, which should add up to 3330. But you can see, even if we can't read it on the ribbon, you can see these risers should all rise up. So these three here should all rise up to point 3, and this last one should rise up to point 0. But if we do a total, you can see only 2 have risen up here, and this one is sticky. And that's the issue with this machine. So right now we're putting 3330 after I played with that one. If I put in all 9s, you can see the problem. These will all rise up to add in point 9. This one is not, unless you play with it. So my suspicion is that some part of that particular riser assembly for that column is bent and causing it to stick like that. So I'm going to have to get in here and see if we can fix that. So first thing is this key on the front just pulls out like that. So a little stub like that. And we can flip this around here. We'll take the paper out. So there's a little thing, this lifts up, and then this rod should just slide out, and that drops the paper roll. We'll pull that right out. Put that off to the side for later. Put this off to the side for later. And then there's 4 screws here that have to come out. So I will take those out. It's going to be kind of hard to show on camera because of the angle that they're at. So I'll take those out and we'll continue. Now, so the 4 screws out of this, that loosens this up, but it's still attached by a lever that does the paper advance. So see right there, that lever is hooked on this peg. That has to get detached, and I found the way to do that is to put the machine like this so that lever sticks out, so it came out there. And you just kind of have to wiggle this off. It's not the, there we go, not the most convenient disassembly, but that's what they did. You can complete the cycle there, and then there's a screw here that has to come out. Those are longer than the other screws, and then there's also one right here in the front that has to come out. this thing should just come right off, really. That comes off. And there's the mechanism. And like I said before, you can just barely see the bottom of the risers there, and then just barely see some of the register there, and then everything else you can see they got a plate here on the side you can't really see into there. They got this plate on the top, and the same thing plate on that side, so you can't really see much into the actual riser assembly down there, because of this cover here, and then, yeah, so here's the bottom of the risers, and I think it's kind of hard to see down in there, but there's a guide plate that these are into, like all the way down there. It's right there, you can kind of see the end of it. I think that the end of that one might be bent, the one that's sticking, and causing it to drag in that guide plate, I think. But in order to get to that and confirm it, the whole thing has to come apart. So I have to see, I'm not exactly sure how this comes apart. You can see there's another issue with this machine. So this tissue here, I put in because this spring was making a creaking sound, so that dampened it. I'm not sure if that is, I have to find out some other solution to that. But anyway, so at least if we can get this apart and get in there to that. When I was cleaning this before, I did take the keyboard assembly off, and it was not very convenient to either take off or put back on. So I'm thinking that maybe I'll try taking the machine off the bed plate first and see if that makes this assembly any easier or not. Some machines you can look at them and see it's kind of obvious like how they came apart and how they go back together. This one is not quite that kind of machine, so I'll take a look at this, see if I can figure out exactly the most efficient, or at least the most efficient way I can find to disassemble this, and see where we go from there. So this machine seems to be made of one main assembly, this piece in the middle, with extra parts on each side, and then these two side plates. Now there's 6 screws holding the side plates down, 3 in each one. And there's, as far as I can see, at least 4 screws holding this down, 2 in each side here. So you can see like all the way down there in the bottom. I've already taken one out. There's another one back here which is buried under these levers that I can't get to right now, so I haven't taken that out yet. I was going to try and take the sides off first and then see if I can get some of this mechanism out of the way to get at those screws. But the issue is there's a screw right down in there that you can't get to because of the keyboard top plate is in the way. It's in too far in every direction to really get on it. So the other potential problem is you can't really take this off easily because this rod right here goes into a hole in this side. You can see it sticking out right there, and then also into a hole in the center mechanism. So the only way I've really found to get this off is to kind of pry this over so that that rod will be free, either pry it one way or the other. See like that, how it's free to come out, kind of. That popped the rod out. Then there's another rod that goes from this side over here to a point right there, which is also keeping it in. And there doesn't really seem to be a clean way to get that out, that I can see anyway. Either way you do it, you gotta pry on something. It would be much more convenient if you could take this side off, and then that would allow this to slide over and this rod to slide up from this side, but it doesn't seem to be a way to do that, so I'm really not sure how exactly they intended people to get these apart, or even how they put them together in the factory, because this is very inconvenient. See, I think now I'm stuck on this rod here, I think. That's what I was stuck on. Yeah, see now that I pry that over, that rod comes out, but like I said, it doesn't seem to be a convenient way to get that off, which is weird to me because I can't imagine them being in the factory fiddling with and prying these over and trying to wiggle that in. Like, there should be a convenient way to do it, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, so now we can take, hopefully, let me take this screw out of this side here, still kind of annoying to get at because this adjustment screw right here, you can see that, is right in the way of it. Let's see if we can get this out. There we go. And I've also taken one screw out of here to hold that rod in. Now see if this will, I'm going to have to pry it up a little bit because there looks like to be dowel pins in the front and back. So see if we can't lift it up a little bit here. Doesn't really seem to want to cooperate. And something's not working here. Okay, so maybe that won't come off as easy as I thought either. So see if I can figure out how to get that out of there. Now I don't think you can get the dowel pins out. This maybe you tap them out, maybe. Either way, this is not. It's not very convenient at all to disassemble. Something else I want to mention is in order to get the keyboard assembly out, I also took out one screw right here. It's a lever that runs up in behind this plate, and then there's a screw like this with a shoulder on it that goes through that plate, and then the plate rides on the shoulder, and then the screw end screws into that lever. So you have to take that out in order to get the keyboard out. Let's see. And that is this piece, actually. Well, we can't get it out but this is the piece that has to be loose from that in order to wiggle enough to be able to get the rod. You can see the rod here. It doesn't come out. Now it has to be loose from that plate in order for you to wiggle it back enough to wiggle it out. But anyway, yeah, so far this is not very convenient to assemble or disassemble. So let me see if I can figure out how to get this side plate off, and then the other side, we can get that off too maybe. The screw is kind of obstructed by a plate here, so it's going to be more annoying. But yeah, so far this machine is not one of the ones that it's clear how to disassemble. Well, I've got this further apart now. Luckily, I found out that the pins you actually can tap out pretty easily, but they are directional, and they only tap out one way. And they're just little tiny pins like that. Focus. It's kind of focused. So like this piece here was pinned in, but I was able to tap the pins in and then take it out because I wanted to get this guide out that I was talking about. That goes in under there like that. But that wasn't the issue, I don't think. You can see it's still sticking, although not quite as bad. Now we can see one of the issues now. I'm not sure if that's the only issue or not. May have, like I said, it's not sticking quite as bad, but you know, maybe taking the guide out might have loosened some of the tension. Anyway, not sure if this will show up on camera, but you can see one of the springs. See how there's a spring bowed out next to the one I'm moving? So the spring for this riser has somehow gotten pinched underneath this riser, and that's what's causing the extra drag on it. Now, how in the world that managed to happen, I have absolutely no clue, because like you can hardly even see in there with the machine assembled, let alone get in there to poke anything. And you know, there's no holes in the base there or anything that you get access to that area. So I have absolutely no idea how that ever could have possibly happened. It's very strange. So I'm going to see if I can pop that spring back underneath and back over to where it belongs, and we'll see if that fixes the issue with that not rising all the way. Yeah, really absolutely no clue how that could have possibly happened. It's very strange. Alright, so I got the spring popped back over. Now you can see, hopefully, all the springs down in the bottom there are all straight. And I also put the mainspring back on, which I had taken off because I was planning on taking the whole thing out, and the hook is pinned, but not removable pin, like pinned and staked on to the base plate. So that's why I've taken that off, because I was planning on moving the whole thing, but since I'm not doing that, I put it back on just to make it more convenient to test. And now, you can see they all rise up nice and evenly. And this is jamming because this is not correct, but that's fine. So this piece here, actually you can't see, is the keyboard return. So normally it should be over here, something like this, where the pegboard is slid out to. And then when you pull the handle, see, watch this lever here, pushes it back, which would pull the pegboard back, but because there's no stop, because the pegboard's out, this just flops over, and then the next time it'll jam. So that's all that was. So that seems to be fine now. Seems I fixed the problem. I'll put this guide back in and see if it still works. Hopefully it will. And if it still works after that, I think we can continue reassembling this. And while I have it down this far, I'm going to do some more cleaning down in here. Some of the parts I couldn't get it easily when I first cleaned and oiled this, so I'll do that. And I think hopefully, if it works with this back in, we should just be able to reassemble it again. Alright, so I managed to get this mostly back together. I didn't video it because it was a pretty annoying process. Turns out that actually you do have to take the spring here out, because I can't find a way to get to the screw here or there with that spring in there, no matter where you, like what position you put the machine in, like whether you pull the handle out or back, or doesn't make any difference. I can't find a way to get to either of those screws. So I have to take the spring back out, screw the side down, and then put the spring back in. So it's very inconvenient to work on. Aside from that, the build quality is pretty decent, I think. I got the nice cast aluminum base, and if you look like, here, the frame here and everything is, nice heavy steel. So, like as far as the quality of the parts, it seems fine. It's just really inconvenient and annoying to work on. Anyway, so this machine works pretty much the same way as any standard 10 key adding machine, where your inputs here advance a pegboard, and you can watch it moving across. Let's move this down actually. So you can see right here is one of the rails, and the pegboard you can see sticks out the end there. Actually, you can see, if we can get in here, see the 2 rows of holes? Right here, 2 rows of holes, that's where pegs would go. For a larger capacity machine, they would use these 2 additional rows back here, but this is a smaller capacity one, so it doesn't have any pins in there. But basically, that's the idea. Each of those would be filled with spring detented pins, and then as you push a key, it pushes down the right pin for that column. So I'll be able to see if I can. You can see the pegboard has moved over. We can get down here. And maybe anyway. There, you can see the bottoms of the pins there. You can kind of see how. See how one there is sticking down? So there's going to be pins for 0 through 8 in each column, and depending on which key you push, it pushes down one of those pins. And then when you pull the handle, like we saw when this machine was disassembled, how these pieces down here slide forward, they'll slide forward until they're stopped by one of the pins. Or in the case of 9, they'll slide all the way forward, which is why when we had the keyboard off, it was always adding 9 all the time. Like all the samples were rising all the way up to 9 because there's nothing to stop them. But yeah, so that's how your input works. This piece will slide across, and then each key you push pushes on a pin that particular column. So like if you push 1, 2, 3, it'll push down the second pin in the first column because 0 is the first pin. And then in the second column, it'll push down the third pin, and then in the third column, it'll push down the fourth pin. And then when you pull the handle, these will slide up until they're stopped, which will transfer the motion. So you can see these tooth racks, which you pointed out earlier, those are part of the same piece. So if you kind of look at this sideways, those pieces here that slide forward are kind of like an L shape. They go over and then up and then over, and as they go across here, that's where these tooth racks are on. So it's the same piece. So when those slide forward on the bottom, these tooth racks also slide forward. And if you look in here, you can see a set of gears. Those tooth racks will engage on those gears, and then those gears transfer the motion to teeth on the back of these pieces you can see here. So as those slide forward, it rotates the gear, and these slide up to mark the appropriate number on the paper. And additionally, those tooth racks here also engage with these gears here, which are the storage register, or the accumulator, whatever you want to call it. And this accumulator will engage or disengage. So like on one stroke, when these slide one direction, I think it will be disengaged initially, and then on the back stroke, it'll drop down, and then as these racks slide backwards, it'll drive the register for the correct number of digits. So we can kind of see that action here. So as I pull the handle, let me clear that out real quick. Oops. So watch down in here. This is the register engage disengage mechanism. So watch this. As I pull the handle, you'll see nothing happens. And when it gets down to the bottom, that's going to hook on that pin down there. And see, it pushes that pin, and now the register has dropped down, it's engaged. And then go up to the top. And now if I pull the handle again, see it'll push that pin, register pops up as disengaged. The levers would be moving forward at this point. Down at the bottom, it engages with the tooth racks. Now the levers would be moving backwards, driving the register. And that's the register timing. Now that changes for total versus subtotal. So for example, I push down the total key. See, it leaves the register engaged. And then down at the bottom, it disengages. Basically what that does is, I push it again. See, it engages the register, and at this point with the register engaged, the levers would be free to move. They won't be locked in place by the pegboard or anything. They'll be free to move. If I can get this machine to stay in position. So they'll be free to move, and these levers will spring forward based on the springs that we saw until each position of the register has been driven backwards, that the carry tab on each wheel hits the stop at 0. So basically, the pegboards drive forward until all the digits in the register return to 0, which basically has subtracted the amount in the register from the register, which tells you how basically it positions these rockers appropriate to the digits. So for example, if there was a 9 here, this rack here would be spring-loaded forward, as the springs we saw on the bottom. This will slide forward until this particular position goes from 9 all the way back to 0, which would mean this rocker would be all the way forward, and this print head would rise all the way up to 9, ready to print the total from that column. And the same thing, like this one had 5, this rack would have slid forward until this register was at 0, which means this rack would have slid forward 5 positions, and this print head would be at 5. And then if you keep pulling the handle, it disengages the register, which means that the register stays at all zeros, and then it would have returned the racks to the home position, ready for the next entry. And then if you do a subtotal, basically subtotal skips the last lever of disengaging, so I'll push down the subtotal key, and now it engages the register, and the register stays engaged. And basically what that means is, instead of the register, like how we saw in the total cycle, the register disengages and stays at all zeros, in the subtotal cycle, the register will stay engaged, and then on the backstroke, the racks will slide back home, turning the register the appropriate number of positions back to where it started at. So for example, if this one had been at 9, the rack would have slid forward to the 9th position, but the register would have stayed engaged, so when the rack slid back home, it would turn this wheel back up to 9, and the same thing for the other positions. So that's basically how the register timing works. These machines aren't like super complicated in principle. It's just, there's a lot of individual parts that have to go into it to make it work the way that it's supposed to work. So even though, I look at this and you see, oh, there's a mess of levers there, but when you actually understand how the machine works, it's not super complicated. You can kind of see, what different things are doing. So basically all that these keys do is affect the timing of that little ratchet there when it engages and disengages the register. So you're ready to put this back together now. And the multiply key, what that does is, see, it pushes that up. And if you look down in here, I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but there is remember how I showed this lever here kept getting jammed because the lever on the front, without the keyboard, and the lever on the front kept falling over to the all the way to the right, and then that was jamming this lever. So what this lever does is there's a tooth section. You can see it. Get in here. You can see right there is a tooth section down there, and that is driven by the pegboard. So as I advance the pegboard, you can see the gear turning, and then that rotates the tooth section here, which rotates this shaft. Now there's a peg, it's kind of more like a cam type thing, sticking up off this shaft here, that when you pull the handle, that lever comes forward. See if I can do this so I can get my hand in the way. No. That lever comes back, actually without the multiply key engaged. That lever will push that back, and that pushes the pegboard back to the home position. When you put multiply down, basically it just lifts that lever up so that it doesn't engage with that cam, and therefore never returns the keyboard to the home position. So it's a pretty basic mechanism as well. So I think that it is time to put the case back on this. Everything seems to be working now. So the case back on this, I'll have to get a new ribbon installed, and I think we can do a little demo then. You can see this is a relatively simple machine compared to that. Got a little top view here. The differences there. This is in a rather sad state. This used to be a belt at some point in the last 50 years. That's a video for another day, assuming I can find a replacement for that, but yeah. So bonus points to anyone who knows what that is down in the comments. Yeah, so much simpler. Alright, so everything's all back together now. I installed a blue ribbon, although based on when I was cleaning up the wheels, it looks like I did have a green one in at some point, but anyway, I went with blue. Just not like a whole thing, just wrap some around each spool. I don't usually put too much ribbon in these because, we don't really need it. Anyway, so a little test here. Do our bite crank. And there we go. You can see that the answer is correct, 3330. So, so far, I'm going to do all 9s. Yep, and if we pull it out. Yep. Okay, so that seems to have fixed the issue we were having. It now adds correctly and is able to do 9 in all columns. And just to double check, if we do 9 in all columns, and then add a 1, it should overflow off the end of the machine. So if we do a total now, we should get nothing. Yep, we get nothing. It means that carry is carried all the way across. So what's happening there is the keyboard capacity is the same capacity as the register. So basically, when you enter all 9s, that fills the register with all 9s. There is no additional position for it to carry off the end. So when you add 1, it just carries off the end of the register. That carry is lost, and the register goes back to all 0s, so it doesn't print anything because it's got all 0s in it. So yeah, that seems to work now. As far as this soup key, what I think happened here is this is actually the total key, by the way. And I think what happened was they lost the total key, and then they didn't want to be pushing the soup key all the time, so they moved the subtotal key to the total key, and then put the soup can on the subtotal key, and then put an S on the top. Now, I do have a parse machine, not of this kind, of a different kind, but the key stems are different. So see how the key stems here are, I'm going to call it long, like horizontal or vertical, but they're long ways this way, versus the multiply key see is long ways back ways, so you're looking on the edge of the key, whereas here you're looking on the flat side. The parts key that I have from a parse machine is this way, not this way, so it won't fit on that key stem. So I could try modifying the key, just cutting another groove in it the other direction, and maybe it'll fit, but we'll see about that. Anyway, the machine does work now, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. It's trying to eat its own paper. It's not very good. There we go. You can see the results there. I'll just smudge that there with my finger trying to get it out. Probably could clean some of the 8 keys and maybe that 9 key, but other than that, yeah, I think I'm going to be satisfied with this. The machine is working. So hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.